This is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you, wherever you're checking out the show, SoFloRadio.com. Maybe you're checking out the podcast, or, of course, listening to us in Washington, D.C. on We Act Radio, 1480 AM WPWC. We appreciate you, wherever you are. I think back during the gun debate, and ever since then, we saw a interesting tactic by gun control opponents to combat any legislation, even before it was ever passed, by blocking federal gun laws in each state, by saying our state doesn't have to abide by federal gun laws. This was kind of a similar tactic that they've taken towards gay marriage, saying it doesn't matter what the federal government does, we are going to ban gay marriage in our state. Abortion. We've seen this on case after case after case, and
we've seen it in a state as a regular course of business when it comes to everything.
Yeah.
In North Carolina.
Right. That we just don't have to abide by any federal laws.
Yeah.
The process is called federal nullification, essentially nullifying federal laws within that state. And it is pretty much against the Constitution.
There's this thing called the Supremacy Clause.
The Supremacy Clause.
There was kind of a war fought over this. South Carolina wanted to, Calhoun versus, Jackson.
The Supremacy Clause. The Supremacy Clause of the United States specifically says that federal laws are supreme over contrary state laws, even if the state doesn't like it. Too bad. Tough.
Yeah, Jan Brewer got a load of that with SB 1070.
Yes. And we're seeing new ones pop up. Because these states think these efforts have been so effective when it comes to things like gun laws and gay marriage and abortion and even immigration in Jan Brewer's case, even when they haven't been really that effective. New states are continuing this effort. Now, their new tactic, their new fight to bring to the state level is Plan B, emergency contraceptive. Recently, the Obama administration dropped its fight in the courts. The Obama administration was trying to say that there should be a reasonable age restriction on who has access to Plan B, the morning after pill. And court after court said that there shouldn't be. A New York judge ruled that there should be no age restriction, and either because of unwillingness to pursue the fight, we don't know, there wasn't a comment released, but the Obama administration said, we're not going to fight this anymore. So states are now taking this effort to block women's access to Plan B and other birth control in the states. Arkansas, for one, is already considering how to get legislation to say that if federal law mandates there shouldn't be, that women should have access to Plan B, we'll make a state law that says that we'll block it here. I mean, isn't the whole purpose of, being a country, being the United States, is kind of realizing that we decide on some of these things together as a nation? Isn't that the whole purpose?
Yes. And to play the devil's advocate, because we did a fun one in the first hour, there are some things that are better left locally. And I'm just making the argument. When it comes to motorcycle laws, helmets, some states have lots of big mountains and curvy roads and all that, and you're going to want to have a helmet law. Some are flat and just straight roads for miles and miles. They may not want to. How about when it comes to marijuana legalization?
Yep.
We have a federal law about that. Yet we as progressives, I know we've done it here, and I will stand by it, we are applauding states who are saying, we're not going to criminalize it here. Now, there's a difference there. The states that are decriminalizing marijuana aren't saying we aren't going to follow federal law and we're going to arrest DEA agents.
Right.
If they, so there's a huge difference. They're not nullifying federal law. They're just saying we're not going to have complementary state laws. We're not going to prosecute people under state law.
Right.
The feds can still do it. We don't like the fact that the feds are doing it. Please, will you not do that? But, there are certain ways that progress occurs on a smaller level. And there are other ways where we go backwards on a smaller level. We have Republicans who love to use the District of Columbia as their little petri dish in terms of trying to outlaw abortion or things like that, because they don't have representatives. They can vote. We do have a representative. but just to speak on the floor, not to vote. So, nullification is different, though, than trying something out or crafting a law that's specific to a state because there's a specific state need.
Right. Nullification.
I don't see how Utah is different than Ohio when it comes to the needs of healthcare choices.
Good point.
That is why this is different. This is one of those things we should make a national decision on because women in the entire country should be entitled to the same healthcare protections.
Yeah.
Therefore, the state-by-state analysis is not valid.
And it's already redundant to laws that are already on the books that I personally find offensive. For instance, Arkansas already has a law that exempts pharmacies in that state to sell. So they don't have to sell Plan B. They don't even have to sell regular birth control if they have a quote-unquote moral objection to it. So if your man pharmacist morally objects to you taking birth control, you might not have access to it in your town because maybe there's not another pharmacy.
Yeah, Mad Men exists today.
Yes.
Remember that was...
I mean, states like this, there are 24 states that have similar laws that block women from getting access to birth control. This Plan B is only going to amplify that because the anti-abortion crowd, the anti-choice crowd, is already actively looking in the states to fight this legislation as well. I mean, we just recently saw in Texas where 700 people challenged a law. They all went to the state capitol to do what they called a people's filibuster to prevent anti-abortion legislation. Well, after 12 hours of those people speaking, 12 hours, the chairman essentially, 7 hours of testimony, the Republican chairman of the House told 300 people who were still waiting, go home. You're being repetitive. So these states can say that they're doing this for the people's will, to enact the people's will. They're not enacting the federal will. They're not enacting the will of the country as a whole. But, I mean, obviously the people in Texas are pretty adamant that they don't want these anti-abortion laws. Well, what did these Republicans do? They deconvened the meeting, stopped the meeting, came back secretly the next day and passed the legislation anyway.
Because it's what they personally think.
Right. So, I mean, how does Plan B have a chance? Yes, federally, we'll say that there's not an age restriction to it anymore, but we still have state after state going and attacking our rights to gun control, our rights to gay marriage, our rights to women's reproductive health.
There was a statement put out. You can find the links to the statement over at the Think Progress blog. You might have to search down a little bit on the page. There are two major decisions anticipated this week when it comes to the Supreme Court on same-sex marriage. The Freedom Federation has put out a statement saying essentially, we don't care what the Supreme Court says. We are not going to abide by the ruling if they allow for same-sex marriage. So they're already planning their own nullification of this. The funny thing is that this is a religious-based organization, and nothing the Supreme Court says is going to make your church recognize these marriages. This is a civil issue. This is a governmental issue. This is not a religious issue.
And it only applies to the federal government, correct? Like DOMA.
No, DOMA does, but Prop 8 affects the California state government.
Right, but the government.
The government, not there's religious exemptions. You don't have to perform these services. You can, but you are not required to, because that is your religion. But they want to take their religion and interpose it on the government of the state of California and the federal government. Just
like these people want to take their religion and impose it on pharmacists in the state of Arkansas. I mean,
they want to impose they want pharmacists to be able to impose their religion on women.
Well, and they can lobby pharmacists. They can make life hell. I mean, we've seen what these anti-choice people do to abortion clinics with picketing and death threats and, God forbid, even worse. You think that they're not going to do that for pharmacists who say, screw you, I'm going to sell Plan B anyway? I mean, these are people who are actively fighting women having the right to have birth control. Birth control.
Right. And we know that when women have those decisions, then they have more control over their life, meaning financially and career-wise and everything, and they're empowered in all aspects of their life.
Yeah.
This is a subjugation of one half of our country, or just over one half of our country, to a secondary role. That's the way they want it. And that's what happens when you take away these decisions.
Yeah.
This is a bigger deal than just birth control.
Yeah. I think that when I think it's hypocritical for Republicans who are constantly saying American exceptionalism and we're the United States of America and
follow the Constitution.
Follow the Constitution. Yet anytime they don't like something, well, we don't have to listen to it. We're not part of the country when it comes to X, Y, and Z.
And if you keep going, we're going to secede.
It seems anti-American to me. Dare I say.
Andrew Jackson actually called it seditious. I'm not going to subscribe to that necessarily, but it's certainly contrary to the Constitution.
It's just, this is their new tactic on everything. They're like spoiled children. We don't get our way on a national level. Fine, I'm going to my room. I'm not going to provide you birth control
Dad said
anyway.
No, I'm going to go ask Mom.
Exactly.
You know?
And they're doing it regardless of the will of the people of the nation. They're obviously doing it regardless of the will of the people of the state. So essentially, they're working for the gun lobby, the church, and the anti-choice crowd, right?
Sure. And the anti-choice crowd is well funded by some big corporations.
At least we know who they're working for. At least we know we figured it out as who they really seem to support. But it sure as heck.
But also
ain't
these
the
types of
voters.
arguments, and it may seem strange that big corporations fund these types of things, but why would they do that? So that we can sit here and argue about some social things, which are important, while they secretly are in closed room negotiations over the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
That's such a good point.
You know, and these I'm not trying to say we shouldn't be discussing this. It's
Right.
important to discuss, but if look over there while we do this over there, you know, argue over a path to citizenship. Well, we're going to flood the market with a bunch of labor that these people have no right ever to vote to become citizens. They're just guest workers, have to go home, you know, so we can keep wages low. You know, it's a lot of, you know, the magician sleight of hand.
Yeah.
Look at the hand that's making the most motion as the other one's palming what's really going on.
It absolutely is. You're totally right. And it just, again, we get right back to corporate power, special interest power. Not only, you know, having control of our Congress, having control of our voting system, having control of all these other issues, but fooling us into debating these social issues while they
were settled, and they should be settled.
Yeah. So anyhow, we're going to run to a quick break, and we'll be back with more. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Lots more stuff. We'll never get to it all, but we'll try. Stick around. Lee Camp in just a few minutes. How about that?
This is going to be fun.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
It's our last errand today, Jimmy. Just need to pick up some light bulbs.
Whoa, there's so many. Did Grandma tell you which ones to buy?
No, but check out the label on this package. It'll help us find the right bulbs.
Does it really matter?
Well, sure. The new light bulbs use a lot less energy, so we save money on our electric bill by using an energy-saving incandescent, CFL, or LED.
How about this bulb?
Let's see. We need to replace the 60-watt bulbs in our bedside lamps. That one is 800 lumens, so it should do the trick.
I've never heard of lumens.
Lumens tell us how bright the light is. The more lumens, the brighter the bulb.
You know, Grandpa, you're a pretty bright guy.
Yeah, you're pretty smart yourself, Jimmy.
Lumens, the new way to shop for light. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. That's EnergySavers.gov. A message from the U.S. Department of Energy.
You may be hearing about people having trouble making mortgage payments and risking losing their homes. Many of them just aren't aware of the options that can prevent foreclosure. There are many options available to homeowners, such as repayment and forbearance plans, loan modifications, and even refinancing. Where does someone go for help? They should talk directly with their lender or a qualified HUD-approved counseling agency. Both can provide helpful information without charging a fee. According to PMI Mortgage Insurance Company, it's not a good idea to pay for services that you can get for free from a lender or a qualified nonprofit counseling agency. To learn more, visit homesafepmi.com or call HUD at 1-800-569-4287 for a counseling agency near you. That's 1-800-569-4287. This message is brought to you by PMI, supporting sustainable home ownership that strengthens communities.
Friends, David Schuster here, and all of us at WEAC Radio are so proud of our neighbors here in Southeast D.C. especially one of our partners, the Ark. The Ark is at 1901 Mississippi Avenue Southeast. It's the home to some of Washington's best, including the Washington Ballet, the Levine School of Music, Boys and Girls Club, and the Children's Health Project. All provide a number of programs and services within the very same facility. The Ark is also home to the Ark Theater, the only theater east of the river, which hosts a variety of dance, music, and theatrical shows each year. Almost everything you could want is at the Ark, so stop by and see them. The Ark, 1901 Mississippi Avenue in Southeast. For more information, visit the Ark's website, www.thearkdc.org, or call 202-889-5901. The Ark, part of Southeast D.C.
This is Stephanie Miller.
Hi, this is Tom Hartman.
Hello, everybody. I'm David Schuster of Take Action News.
I'm Brad Friedman of BradBlog.com.
Hi, I'm cartoonist and agent provocateur P.S. Mueller.
This is Nicole Bell of CrooksandLiars.com, and this is...
You're listening to
and watching
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Jacob Dean.
With Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Great presidents aren't born, they are made. We've got to push people. They don't jump out in front of a parade if there's not a parade there. That is political suicide. The parade, metaphorically, already has to be in the streets with the picket signs saying, we need progressive talk in Portland, or we need marriage equality in Washington, or we need marijuana legalization in Colorado, whatever.
The Trans-Canada Pipeline.
Stop
the pipeline.
We have to push for our positions because they're not just going to out of thin air.
FilterFreeRadio.com.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you wherever you're checking us out. So, big news this week was that Illinois adopted the nation's strongest fracking regulations. They seem pretty common sense that oil and gas companies have to register with the State Department of Natural Resources. They have to detail how the well will be drilled, the amount of fluid that will be used and what pressure it will be at, and how they will withdraw the wastewater, contain it, which, we're seeing up in Alberta that wastewater can cause serious problems. And they have to actually disclose what chemicals are used. And it begs the question, when you hear stuff like that, how are regulations like that not already in place?
Yeah.
But they're not.
We researched it this week, because my first question was, is this by the Supremacy Clause? Doesn't the EPA have authority over this, and aren't they regulating it yet?
Well, technically they are, but their idea of regulations is to provide oil and gas companies a quote-unquote exemption that includes their proprietary information can be, I'm not exaggerating, anything that is used in the process of drilling, anything that comes in contact with the well during the drilling process.
For natural gas.
For natural gas.
So in other words, there is no real regulation of fracking by the EPA at this moment.
And state after state where fracking is being done has no regulation. Only a few states, Arkansas, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Texas, and Wyoming, have any laws requiring companies to disclose what chemicals are used during the process. Illinois had no fracking regulation before this law. They are now the first state to disclose, to force companies to disclose which chemicals are used, and they will also provide a public comment period before a permit is finalized, and they have provided a complaint process, essentially that individuals, residents, who suspect that fracking has polluted their water supply can actually request an investigation from the Department of Natural Resources, and an investigation must be done within 30 days, and a determination must be made within 180 days.
And then there's a cause of action that can be brought in court, I hope, after that. A lot of times those types of things concern me. Remember we talked about arbitration earlier?
That's such a good point.
Sometimes when you go to this administrative thing, for example, a workers' comp, think of that.
Yeah.
You have to go through this certain channel and you lose your right to sue in court. I would want to see what happens after that 180 days.
Right.
On the surface, it sounds great.
On the surface, it sounds great. It highlights the whole problem that this dangerous, controversial process is not being reviewed by virtually anybody. I mean, California just recently said they would just like more information on a really dangerous process called acid jobs, which, in addition to all the dangerous things fracking already uses, the company includes hydrochloric or hydrofluoric acid during the process.
What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong?
Putting acid into the ground.
I mean, the free market will decide, right?
The free market. Yeah, they're just lowering the property values there to increase the property values in the state next door.
Exactly, but if consumers don't like it, I mean,
they can move.
They can move. They'll buy somewhere else, right? They won't purchase natural gas.
Yeah.
It's astonishing that such a dangerous process is only now. This has been in use for 30 years.
We've been talking about fracking. I just didn't know the EPA. And the question is because the EPA has exempted it, does that mean that the states can't regulate, or does it mean that the EPA has just set a floor? When it comes to these EPA things, the Supremacy Clause has some interesting rules in that is the EPA say you can't, or is the EPA just the bare minimum and you can regulate above that?
I don't know, but I would.
It's more the floor.
I would bet that these companies are going to test that theory.
Absolutely.
And I certainly hope they don't do it before the current Supreme Court. Yeah. So, anyhow, we're going to
run.
run.
The whole problem right now would be the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, because that's where it'd go first.
Oh, goodness gracious. Can't win today. Can't win. Good job on it by Illinois, but definitely we need some more oversight of this dangerous, dangerous process. We're going to run to a quick break, and we're going to be back with Lee Camp. He is an author, activist, comedian, and host of Moment of Clarity show. We will be back with him coming up next. Stick around.
A beautiful place full of wonderful things just waiting to be experienced.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Step right up, folks, and take your chances in the amazing new American workplace. Constantly high unemployment, low wages always, no employee bargaining power, a corporate paradise. This paradise has enriched the already rich investor elite and rewarded top executives with multi-million-dollar pay packages. It also lets corporations treat the masses of people in today's workforce like Kleenexes. Just use them up and toss them. After all, they're cheap, plentiful, and disposable. Indeed, taskmasters in suits have now redefined the term hired to mean that you're tethered to a corporation full-time, but you actually work and get paid for only the few hours a week when the boss calls. This nefarious practice, known as on-call shifts, is all the rage among national retail chains. Such giants as Abercrombie & Fitch, Gap, and Urban Outfitters require employees to work without set schedules and to be available to have their string yanked at any time, day or night, even on weekends, with as little as 2 hours' notice. Likewise, if customer traffic in a store is slow, retail workers who got dressed up, battled the morning commute, and reported on time can simply be sent away after an hour or so, with no pay for their lost hours. A recent survey of some 400 retail employees in New York City found that only 17% have a set schedule. Those with no set hours also have no set income and no life. If you're at the beck and call of the boss, what do you do with your children? How do you make a doctor's appointment? What if you're taking a class or trying to work a second job? This is Jim Hightower saying this shameful on-call practice says that the corporation owns you, and that abuse of workers is a legitimate business practice in America. To help stop it, contact RetailActionProject.org.
If you like these feisty pops of populism that Hightower zings out on the airwaves, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter provides the in-depth lowdown on what the greed heads of Wall Street and the boneheads of Washington are doing to us behind the scenes. With Hightower's saucy Texas humor and truth-telling populist perspective, the lowdown literally can lift you up. And get this, you can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. At a time when unions, working families, and worker rights are under right-wing attack in many states, it's a whole different story in Colorado. Phil Hayes is Political and Legislative Director for the Colorado AFL-CIO.
The session that we just completed on May 9th was probably the best session that working families have had in Colorado in a generation. There has been a huge transformation in Colorado in the last decade or so, and I would argue that our legislature is probably more progressive, more pro-working family than virtually any legislature in the country.
A major jobs bill was passed, collective bargaining rights were expanded for firefighters, public workers got raises, and progressive election reform was also passed. Hayes says the key is concentrating on putting pro-working family people in the legislature.
Winning state house and state senate races is critical, and I think what we've seen in Michigan and Wisconsin, I think, bolsters that argument. We spend millions of dollars on capturing and maintaining majorities in the state legislature in Colorado, and that's really how we've been able to, make the progress.
In a little more than 100 days, enrollment will begin for people to buy insurance under the Affordable Care Act's health care exchanges. Families USA Director Ron Pollock watches healthcare issues closely, and he says he believes the exchanges will be in place in time, but some glitches are to be expected.
Based on my observations, both in terms of what's happening in states and what the Department of Health and Human Services is doing in Washington, I think the marketplaces and exchanges will be ready. Now, can I say that there are going to be no glitches? Of course not. Whenever you've got major legislation and a new program, periodically there are glitches, and I suspect there will be some glitches here.
Pollock says this healthcare reform will include significant help for people trying to afford health insurance.
There will be new subsidies available for people trying to buy health coverage if they've got income below 400% of poverty, and that reaches very deeply into the middle class.
Tarak Koff is one of several members of Veterans for Peace on a hunger strike demanding the closure of the U.S. military prison at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Koff says inmates there continue to be tortured and held without trial.
They are tortured. We have become a nation that tortures, that sanctions torture, and we feel it's got to stop. This is one of the crimes of war. It's absolutely horrible. And if you're any kind of American who believes in the principles of freedom, democracy, and all the other things that this country is supposed to stand for, you've got to be absolutely appalled to your very bone about what's going on in Guantanamo.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you wherever you are checking us out. We are very excited to be joined by none other than Lee Camp, author, activist, comedian, and host of Moment of Clarity podcast and show. Lee, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. How you guys doing?
We are always, always, always happy to talk to you. I was checking out your last Moment of Clarity. It was just put up a couple days ago about the free market. And I was inspired about how much that problem influences so many other problems that we deal with today. Can you tell us about the facts about the free market that will blow our minds?
Well, yeah, I named it Facts About the Free Market That'll Blow Your Mind, but it kind of gets a little deeper than that. It's about how, the market, the market idea, the market economy is not right for other areas of our life. If you go to dinner, if you go to your mom's house, you go visit your mom, and she makes you dinner, and you then hand her $20, she'll slap you in the face. And the reason is because markets aren't right for every area of our life, but we're acting like they are. And we act like, if we want to take care of our elderly, then there needs to be a price on it. And if we want to take care of health care for every American, then there needs to be a price on it. And we've kind of lost this concept that maybe price, yes, it's efficient some of the time, but maybe it's not the answer for everything we do. And then I also in the video, in the Moment of Clarity video, talk about the fact that even the big banks, you know, and the heads of the big banks, no one pushes the free market like them. You know, they want as little regulation as possible. But then at the same time, and this is from Bloomberg.com, so this is not some alternative news source, says that the big banks, the top 5 big banks, get roughly $63 or $64 billion in subsidies per year, and they make a profit of, drum roll please, $64 billion.
Yeah, it's...
So they basically, and this is a quote from Bloomberg.com, basically the profits of the biggest banks are just a transfer from taxpayers to stockholders.
Yeah, if that doesn't infuriate somebody listening, I really don't know what will. I mean, the banks are the reason we experienced, at least a major reason, we experienced a financial meltdown. And yet, in addition to TARP, in addition to the bailout, in addition to all the taxpayer monies we handed over and said, here, please undo the damage you caused to our economy, now we're giving them the money for their profits, which also probably includes, you know, golden parachutes and dividends to stockholders and money that we're just
and
sucking
payments
away.
For settlement agreements.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
I mean, how does that not just, how are people not pissed off rioting in the streets over that article? I read it too, so I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Yeah, and you know, there's something, you mentioned the bailouts and everything. There's something wrong with an economic system where every time it gets knocked out cold, a different economic system called socialism has to come in to prop it back up. You know, that's the sign of something faulty, something that needs to be fixed. When the more you unfetter capitalism, the more of these collapses happen, and then socialism comes to the rescue.
Yeah, capitalism will never fail because it'll always have socialism to keep it afloat. Right. It just seems like this problem, this idea that so many Americans have bought into, the free market will decide everything, is so nonsense because there are so few places. In fact, I can't think of any where we have a true free market, where government isn't intervening, or we don't have a monopolistic power, or we only have one company providing a service. I mean, where's an example of a true free market?
Well, and then the free market gospel people will say to you what you just said. They'll go, exactly. That's why the free market hasn't gotten a chance to work, because it's not truly free. But in fact, that's like saying, you know, you go into a fenced-off backyard with a pit bull, it bites you, and you then go, well, it's because it's fenced in. Well, no. If you open the fence, it's just going to bite more people.
Yeah, that is a perfect example of a Lee Camp analogy, too. I found one story that totally just... I thought you would get a good kick out of it as to how much the free market is not really free. I'm sure you're familiar with Tesla, great green energy car company, makes some pretty awesome cars and doing very well. States really, you know, state automakers and auto dealers are terrified by Tesla. We've seen them try and block Tesla from being able to sell cars. Well, now New York City car dealers want to take it a step further and actually make it illegal to even register a Tesla in the state of New York. How is that free market?
Yeah, oh yeah, we love protectionism. You know, whether it be blocking out the cars that we don't like that are better than ours or more efficient than ours, whether it be, you know, our products can only be, exported to certain areas. We love protectionism, but then when other countries use protectionism, that's when we get very upset. So. Yeah.
I see, just to remind everybody, we're speaking with Lee Camp, author, activist, comedian, host of Moment of Clarity. You can check out all of it at leecamp.net. Lee, you know, I've seen a lot of your moments of clarity recently, and they're always very inspiring. We play as many as possible on this show. I see you've been following the protests and the actions going on in Brazil and throughout the world. Do you think we'll ever see that as a response here? I mean, to problems like this pretend free market that corrupts our entire freaking country.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so, and I think that Occupy was definitely a taste of it. It showed that we're not hopeless when it comes to protesting. It's just we've maybe got more going against us. I think I doubt that Brazil has, you know, I don't know, but I doubt they have 12, 24-hour news channels that just spit out crap into your face. You know, I doubt they have quite the lies being put forward by our media that we do. I mean, even on something that really the right and left should agree on, such as not wanting a surveillance state, our media, every last channel, did a great job of being like, no, I'll just focus on Snowden.
Yeah.
Just focus on Edward Snowden's a traitor. Now he's not, but even the fact that you're spending all your time having that debate means that you're ignoring the actual debate of the surveillance state.
Amen.
So I think that is a lot of the reason we maybe aren't standing up to the level Brazil is, that we have a media to tell us to shut up and go back to shopping. But, you know, it could be a lot of things. The numbers just came out the other day that 70% of Americans are on prescription drugs. So maybe we've drugged ourselves into a stupor. I don't know.
I can only wonder what percentage that would be if we included the drugs we inadvertently get that are pumped into our, public water and food.
Well, those are tasty, though. Those are tasty. That's a different kind.
Yeah. I hope that we can... get it together as a nation to stand up to ridiculous things like blocking Tesla. I mean, do we need a Who Killed the Electric Car 2 before we wake up to stupid problems like this and throw out this idea that the magical, free hand of the market is going to decide everything and it's going to do anything but continue to just punch us in the face over and over and over again?
Yeah, I mean, it's blocking Tesla, it's blocking, labeling GMOs, it's blocking WikiLeaks from revealing information, anything to stop better ideas from getting into the mix is you see it time and again. And I think to be positive about it for a minute here, I think that you are seeing more and more people wake up, whether it's in the United States or elsewhere. But I think it is this growing bubble of anger that is popping off here and there, and we may see it coalesce sooner than we realize because people are getting their information from alternative sources like your show and like my Moment of Clarity rants that people are watching and gaining a different viewpoint, a more accurate, less corporate bought viewpoint.
Yeah, I think people are hungry for that independent media. I think the amazing response that you got on Kickstarter of how many people really wanted to see more of what you have to say. And I understand. I mean, we adore your rants on Moment of Clarity. We are thrilled to be able to play them on our show. I think people are inspired by people like you who are willing to stand up and speak out, and they want to see more of it. When can we expect some full-length episodes of Moment of Clarity?
We should have. So we have 3 up already, but we should have some more coming out. For those, just to clear up what you're talking about, I did a Kickstarter to make Moment of Clarity into a much larger project. And don't worry, the shorter ones will continue to come out, so those will still be available. But the bigger one, which will have interviews, and we've had interviews with Roseanne Barr and Greg Palast and a lot of these great people. And some on-the-street activism. I think in one of the earlier ones I threw up on the Federal Reserve. So, that kind of thing. The more episodes will be coming out very soon, in maybe just a week or two. And we should be funded through at least probably 10 or 15 more episodes. And really, really excited for that. People can check that out at leecamp.net.
We are really excited about it, and I have to say that I was personally happy to get the email just, I think, yesterday that my punch apathy in the you-know-what button will be coming in the mail soon. Only you could put that on a button, and I am so proud. I can't wait to get it, and I will totally wear it, maybe with a little blurred out version on this show.
I think you put a little piece of black tape over it, and it would even be better because then you'd be speaking out against censorship at the same time.
We could take on apathy and censorship all at once, thanks to the fine, amazing work of Lee Camp. In addition to being an author, a host, an activist, you are also a comedian. Where are you going to be next? I know you're going to Canada soon. Any more tour dates in the U.S.?
Yeah, well, so I play New York all the time. So if anybody's ever in New York City, I have shows a lot. But outside of that, I will be coming to Asheville, North Carolina, and Portland, Maine. Asheville is on July 1st, and Portland is on July 13th. I believe the details are at leecamp.net. And then Montreal, Canada at the end of July, and then Edinburgh, Scotland for the entire month of August.
Wow. Well, you picked some really cool cities. Asheville and Portland, Maine are some pretty cool cities that I wish we could come and see you in. I'm sorry that we can't be there, but we will continue to play Moment of Clarity and watch for new episodes, the full episodes, which with the set that I am still entirely jealous of.
It's, that's taped in Prohibition-era tunnels down below the studio, so...
Yeah, it's really cool. Everybody certainly needs to check it out, and check out Lee's amazing rant on the facts about the free market that will blow your mind, as usual, as every Moment of Clarity tends to do. It will blow your mind. Thank you so much, Lee. We always appreciate having time for us.
Thank you guys for having me on.
Rock on. Lee Camp, everybody. You can check out Lee at leecamp.net. Obviously, he's got an amazing book. He is an amazing activist. You can find out where you can see him in person, his great comedy show, and check out the Moment of Clarity podcast. I don't know how he has time for all of that, but we are extremely thankful that he does. Just so much great stuff over there, and it will get you inspired. It will make you remember that there are people who care about these issues and who are fighting like hell for them, and Lee is one of those people. We're always, always honored to speak with him. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, and we will be back with more, so stick around.
I've seen the show. It's excellent.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
You may be hearing about people having trouble making mortgage payments and risking losing their homes. Many of them just aren't aware of the options that can prevent foreclosure. There are many options available to homeowners, such as repayment and forbearance plans, loan modifications, and even refinancing. Where does someone go for help? They should talk directly with their lender or a qualified HUD-approved counseling agency. Both can provide helpful information without charging a fee. According to PMI Mortgage Insurance Company, it's not a good idea to pay for services that you can get for free from a lender or a qualified nonprofit counseling agency. To learn more, visit homesafepmi.com or call HUD at 1-800-569-4287 for a counseling agency near you. That's 1-800-569-4287. This message is brought to you by PMI, supporting sustainable home ownership that strengthens communities.
Say you want to go to college.
Yay!
A Big Ten college. But you don't want to feel like part of the, well, you know. Is there an answer for you? Of course. Indiana University East.
Go Red Wolves!
Indiana University East. You'll get the quality of a Big Ten education in a small college setting. IU East offers more than 50 fields of study, from accounting to political science, taught by internationally recognized faculty with an average of 18 students per class. So it's not, student number 95A-6273, please report to. It's more like, hey, John, welcome to class. Best of all, you'll graduate with one of the most respected degrees anywhere, a degree from IU. Don't wait. Go to iue.edu or call 800-959-EAST to arrange a visit to Indiana University East. IU. Focused on you.
When our daughter Ava was 4, we noticed she didn't talk much. A genetic test revealed that she had hearing loss caused by 2 mutated genes. One she inherited from myself, the other from her dad. If it weren't for the amazing people at U of M, we might have never known the true cause of Ava's hearing loss or how to properly treat it.
The University of Michigan C.S. Mott Children's Hospital is one of only a handful of hospitals in the world researching genetic hearing loss in addition to treating it. Our breakthrough research and advanced treatments combined with outstanding care help us change children's lives in extraordinary ways. For the leaders and best in pediatric care, call a Mott Patient Advisor at 877-475-MOTT or visit mottchildren.org.
She is more talkative now and more social. She loves music now. She's humming to the music, and it's sweet to actually hear her humming.
To learn more, call 877-475-MOTT.
They not only helped us find answers, they helped Ava find her voice.
That's the Michigan difference.
We Act Radio is a very proud partner of the Start at Westminster, a harm reduction, prevention, and awareness initiative sponsored by the Westminster Presbyterian Church right here in D.C. START stands for Syringe, Treatment, Advocacy, Resources, Training. These are the core elements of the harm reduction philosophy at START. The goal of this program is to reduce transmissions of HIV, hepatitis, and other bloodborne infectious diseases by empowering those at risk of infection with the tools, resources, and referrals they need to take charge of their health. Over the past year, the Start at Westminster tested over 1,600 people, and they're averaging about 150 tests each month. And of course, with the proper funding, that number could go even higher. For more information on this terrific program, go to www.startatwestminster.org or visit the Westminster Presbyterian Church, 400 I Street Southwest, right here in Washington, D.C.
I don't want to see your face around here. The time isn't right for you. I said the time isn't right.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Big thanks to our great guests on today's show, Nicole Flato of Think Progress Justice, Lee Camp of Moment of Clarity, and Justin Duckham of the Talk Radio News Service.
Who's now going to be bothered every single week. We're going to ask him every week.
Yes, he was holding out on us. We like to end the show with a funny story, but before we do, I wanted to talk about something that I thought was one of the coolest pieces of news this week. The state of Maryland has decided that GDP, or in a state's case, GSP, gross state product, is no longer an accurate measurement of how the state is doing economically. GDP is only an aggregate measure of costs and money, income growth. But it
Not
doesn't...
even income growth. It's money spent.
Right.
On a service, on a good, on a labor, on buying a house. It's just money spent.
Right. But it doesn't accurately reflect who is spending that money, how much is in the hands of people who need it, and how much is in the hands of the wealthy. There's so much more.
A forest burns down, and the cost to put out that fire is a positive GDP.
Right.
Because
Just a perfect example of how wrong that is.
So, what is the real net cost to a state of the loss of that forest against how much was paid in the gains in terms of revenue to the individual firefighters to bring home to their families and purchase things. So it's not just the aggregate of how much money. It used to frustrate the heck out of me.
Yeah.
These Yahoo articles, because I'm one of the people who clicks on them and I read the comments and get crazy. But what's the best state to live in? And all they look at is the state budget deficit. Well, there's a lot of other things involved, in terms of how to measure something as good or bad. How are people happy? Are they doing what they want to do? Are they able to achieve their goals? Are they able to? Are their families safe?
What's it really like to live in that state?
Right.
For the average person.
Just not whether the state has balanced their budget and
Well, the state of Maryland has addressed this by implementing what's called the GPI, the Genuine Progress Indicator. And just so you know,
has the word progress in
progress.
it. Dun, dun, dun.
We are going to speak with somebody from the state of Maryland. His name is Sean McGuire, and he's from the state's Department of Natural Resources. And we're going to talk to him in a few weeks. So we just wanted to kind of give you a little precursor about how cool this GPI is. Essentially, it includes things like what you were just talking about, Shane, the cost of air pollution, the cost of wetland change and ozone depletion, and cost of, lost forest cover. It includes those as a cost instead of, including a positive benefit for what it costs to put them, to stop a fire in the forest,
because it's on both sides of the ledger, any one of these events.
Right.
And to always just count it as a positive gives you a number that isn't quite accurate.
Right.
And I use the analogy, it's like a doctor's taking someone's temperature, it's 98.6, and you're saying you're completely healthy.
Right.
There are a lot of other aspects to whether or not a state is healthy other than what the GDP number is.
Right. Governor O'Malley also, he explained this. It also includes social indicators like the cost of lost leisure time. If you have to work 2 jobs, there's a cost to that.
And perhaps this article is just putting in terms of negatives, but there is a positive to having leisure time and being able to pursue hobbies or things. Those are going to be pluses in this system.
No, there are those pluses. There's the value of volunteer work, the value of higher education, the value of services. Things like that. This is it's not just a cost. But they're the values of things that really improve quality of life.
Right.
And they're subtracting things that really are detriments to the quality of life and the quality of our future. So this measurement has already been used to influence Maryland's smart growth, clean energy, and green jobs. And all I could think is imagine if we were reviewing the nation under a measurement like this to get a real picture of how our nation is doing on so many different levels. We're going to, in a couple of weeks, we're going to speak with Sean McGuire of the Department of Natural Resources. He's been explaining this for quite some time. And our quick funny story, we have a few here, so I'm going to have to do only one. But we love to point out Republican hypocrisy because it's fun. Well,
it's a little easy, though.
It is easy, especially when Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell, one of the staunchest complainers about government spending and government growth and all of this nonsense, well, he's being investigated by the FBI for accepting a $15,000 catering bill for his daughter's wedding from a campaign donor, as well as for charging the taxpayer for things like a detox cleanse, shoe repairs, deodorant, and dog vitamins. It's like the people who constantly rail against gay marriage. How many of them we find out later have like a hidden gay lover? It's the people who complain about it the most are so often the people who always end up getting in trouble for these similar charges. And it's just dog vitamins. Like, really? Really?
And now you know why when it comes to this tri-state area where we live in Maryland, not Virginia.
Yes, that's a perfect example. I want my dog vitamin money back, Governor McDonald. I don't know how much that is, but I'll take my $350 or whatever you billed the taxpayer for. So that's our funny story. Just Republican hypocrisy. No shock there. Again, thanks to our great guests, Nicole Flato, Lee Camp, Justin Duckham, and thanks to Shano for doing all of his fine work over there. Thanks to Nicole Sandler of Radio or Not, George Rodriguez of SoFlo Radio, Alex Lawson, Kimon Freeman, Pete Callahan of We Act Radio. Thanks to Rocky Mountain Mike for our amazing intro music. Just thanks to Think Progress for always giving us such great information. And remember, if you're listening over on We Act, stay tuned for Mark Levine. And the biggest thing, thank you guys for listening. You're the reason we do what we do, and we'll be back next week with more. Thanks for listening.